So, for 4 decades, this guy named Kenny basically lived his life behind these massive, totally imposing mixing desks.
Oh, yeah. The really intimidating ones in the most famous recording studios on Earth.
Exactly. And, his daily job was to orchestrate the recording and production process for just this incredibly diverse spectrum of artists.
Right.
And when you do that for 40 years, stationed at the absolute summit of the global music and movie industry, you really bear witness to, the entire spectrum of human capability.
You really do. You see it all.
Yeah, you work with artists who are undeniably, just remarkably gifted. And then on the flip side, you spend countless hours trying to capture magic from people who are, in his own words, completely deluded.
It is a profoundly revealing vantage point, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you're the person responsible for actually capturing the sound, you aren't just managing acoustics and, microphones.
Right, it's way more than that.
Yeah, you are managing the raw, unfiltered reality of human ego and, sporadic inspiration. And sometimes literally a total lack of ability.
Yeah, you see exactly how the sausage is made.
Exactly. And you realize pretty quickly that the narrative we usually hear about talent and success is, it's largely a myth.
It really is. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. Our mission for you today is to explore the anatomy of a lifelong passion.
It's a great mission.
We think so. We are going to examine how a singular obsession is actually born, how it gets forged into a practical skill set, and what happens to your psyche when you actually achieve your ultimate lifelong dreams.
Which is a heavy question.
It is, and we are using the introduction to this really fascinating memoir as our roadmap today. It's titled, There Ain't No Rules in Rock and Roll.
Which, is an incredibly fitting title for a book that serves as the sort of accidental chronicle of an entire industry.
Right.
What makes this source material so compelling to me is that it's not just a technical manual about the mechanics of making music.
No, not at all.
It is a deep psychological look at human drive, the fragility of memory, and how we often record the most important moments of our lives without even realizing we're doing it.
Yeah, that part is so crazy to me. But to understand how someone survives a 40-year career navigating, fragile egos and high stakes, we have to rewind a bit.
We have to go way back.
Yeah, we have to look at the exact moment the spark was ignited. Because for Kenny, his entire trajectory stems from a covert mission and a locked door.
Which is so classic, right? Obsessions rarely start with some formal introduction.
They never do.
They usually start with something you aren't supposed to be touching.
Exactly. So we drop into South London in the early 1950s. And Kenny describes this era as the last decade in which the world appeared to exist entirely in black and white.
Wow, what an image.
Yeah, it really sets the mood. He's the youngest of 3 siblings. His sister got married and left home before he really even knew her, and his brother, Harry, is 10 years older.
Okay, so quite a gap there.
A huge gap. And there is a deeply poignant undercurrent to this early environment. Kenny never actually knew his father. He passed away shortly before Kenny was born.
Oh, wow. That's really tough.
Yeah. So consequently, he was raised solely by his mother, a woman he describes quite simply as an angel.
It really paints a picture of a quiet, highly protective, and perhaps somewhat insulated early life.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's a very calm baseline. But, a baseline like that only makes the eventual disruption that much more shocking.
Oh, absolutely. And that disruption arrives in the summer of 1956. Kenny's just 4 years old.
4 years old.
Yeah, tiny. And he hears this inexplicable, extraordinary sound echoing from his older brother Harry's bedroom. He sneaks in and discovers what he calls a magic box.
A magic box. I love that.
Okay, let's unpack this, because understanding the technology of 1956 is really crucial to understanding why this became an obsession.
It's totally different from today.
Completely. A 4-year-old today interacting with technology is a seamless experience, right? They just drag a finger across glowing glass and the media plays.
Right. It takes zero effort.
Exactly. But Kenny discovers his brother's 78 RPM phonograph player turntable. Operating this thing was an aggressive physical interaction.
Well, it was a workout.
To make the box produce sound, a 4-year-old Kenny had to physically wind a heavy crank on the side just to build up internal mechanical tension.
Yeah.
Then he had to lift an incredibly weighty metal arm and delicately drop it onto a fragile, brittle, black circular disc.
I look at it almost like a geological process on it.
Geological process.
Yeah, because we forget how tactile early audio reproduction was. That heavy tone arm utilized a small, stiff needle, usually made of steel,
Right.
And when you dropped it onto a 78 RPM record, which was made of this really tough shellac compound, that steel needle was physically grinding its way through the grooves.
Man, just grinding it down.
Yeah, it's akin to a river carving a canyon. The friction generated between the steel and the shellac was immense. It wasn't just reading data like a laser,
No, not all.
It was a violent physical friction that just happened to produce audible frequencies.
That is wild. And he is doing all of this entirely in secret, right? Just sneaking in whenever his brother leaves the house.
A 4-year-old spy.
Pretty much. He can't read the labels yet, so he has absolutely no idea who the artist is. But he is captivated by this one specific voice.
He's just drawn to it.
Yeah, memorizing the lyrics to his favorite sound. Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel.
Ah, Elvis. Of course.
Right. And he is meticulously covering his tracks, putting the heavy arm back, winding down the tension, leaving the room exactly as he found it.
He thinks he's a ghost.
He does, yet he keeps getting caught. His older brother keeps confronting their mother, absolutely furious that the 4-year-old has been touching the magic box.
And this is where that immense physical friction of the phonograph betrays him.
How so?
Well, those rigid steel needles couldn't withstand the constant grinding against the shellac records.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the technological limitation of the era meant a needle had to be physically swapped out and replaced after just a few plays.
Wow, just a few plays.
Yeah, otherwise a dull needle would permanently destroy the grooves of the record.
So his brother was simply checking his needle inventory?
Precisely. Kenny believed he was an invisible ghost in that room. But every time he played Elvis Presley, he was literally grinding down his brother's finite physical supply of needles.
That is so funny.
He was leaving a microscopic but completely undeniable trace of his own obsession.
The obsession was eroding the evidence.
Literally.
Because of those rapidly dulling needles, the brother figures out the espionage and starts locking his bedroom door. Kenny is completely cut off. The magic box is gone.
Locked out.
But locking the door didn't extinguish the fire, did it?
It never does.
Yeah.
When you forcibly lock an obsession away, it doesn't just dissipate, it metabolizes into something else.
Yeah.
Kenny explicitly notes that this locked door marked the official beginning of his very first addiction.
Wow.
The obsession was forced out of the solitary confines of a bedroom and into the chaotic reality of the outside world.
So true. Which brings us to a jump forward to 1962. Kenny is 10 years old now.
Okay, 10 years old.
And every Saturday, he and his mother navigate the bustling crowds at East Lane Market in South London. Right at the entrance, there's a premium stall run by the AI stores.
Right, selling pristine, brand new singles and albums.
Exactly. It's a sonic paradise, but the retail prices are completely out of reach for their family budget.
Yeah, it serves as a stark reminder of the barrier to entry for his passion. The music is right there, but hidden behind this big financial wall.
But further down, deep inside the market, there's another stall. This one is run by a man named Harry Lettingham.
Harry Lettingham, okay.
And Harry specializes in X-jukebox records. These are heavily used singles, tracks that have fallen off the pop charts, and they are sold for a fraction of the cost of the new ones.
A gold mine for a kid?
A total lifeline.
Yeah.
Browsing these bins of cheap, discarded records becomes Kenny's new obsession. If his mother has a few spare coins, she treats him to a single.
That's sweet.
But Kenny realizes that being a customer just isn't enough. He wants to be behind the table. So every single week, he begs Harry, the stallholder, for a job.
Every week.
Every single week. And Harry says no, every week, for 2 full years.
That is crazy. I mean, the sheer persistence of a 10-year-old returning to face rejection every Saturday for over 100 consecutive weeks is just staggering.
It really is.
It demonstrates a level of intrinsic motivation that you just cannot teach.
Yeah, he was determined. And when Kenny finally turns 12, Harry caves. He gives the kid a chance to work the stall on Saturdays. And the payment isn't even cash. It's 2 or 3 used singles a weekend. Now, on the surface, this just looks like a kid building a record collection. But I look at this as his foundational curriculum in audio engineering.
I agree completely.
Oh.
What's fascinating here is that when you are being paid in inventory rather than currency, you stop just grabbing the obvious chart toppers.
If you branch out.
You start taking risks. Surrounded by this massive, diverse X-jukebox inventory, his acoustic palette expands exponentially.
Yeah, he mentions Pulling Records by Dinah Washington.
Exactly. He's absorbing the intricate phrasing of jazz and blues. He's listening to Johnny Cash. He's diving into the harmonies of Peter, Paul, and Mary.
He isn't just listening to pop structures. He's learning how different genres balance frequencies.
Yes.
How different vocalists use microphones. How acoustic space changes the emotional resonance of a song. He is becoming a student of sound.
A true student.
But beyond the audio education, the East Lane Market provided a masterclass in human psychology, too.
Oh, totally. The market is where you learn to read a room or, well, a street.
Yeah. He highlights this brilliant character from the market, a Mr. Rubinstein who operated the women's clothing stall directly across from the records.
Mr. Rubinstein.
Yeah, and all day long, Mr. Rubinstein would shout this completely paradoxical catchphrase. Just to draw in the crowds, he'd yell, "I'm not here today and gone tomorrow. I'm here today and gone tonight."
It is absolute genius street-level marketing.
Isn't it?
It fabricates immediate urgency, but it undercuts it with a really profound sense of humor.
And Harry the stallholder was equally adept, right? Teaching Kenny how to use a disarming sense of humor to engage with skeptical strangers, haggle over prices, and just manage expectations.
Skills you need in any business.
For sure. Kenny became so good at this that he turned into a minor local celebrity. He could walk around South London and hear people shouting, "Hi, Kenny, how are you?" Half of whom he didn't even know.
That's hilarious. But, we have to connect this directly to his future at the mixing desk. Think about the volatile environment of a recording studio. You have sleep-deprived musicians, massive financial pressure, and incredibly fragile egos.
Oh, a powder keg.
Exactly. Knowing how to place a microphone is only like 10% of an audio engineer's job.
Only 10%?
Yeah, the other 90% is psychological grounding. It's knowing how to convince a notoriously difficult artist to actually step up to that microphone and deliver a performance.
Wow, yeah.
Kenny didn't learn that interpersonal agility in some technical manual. He learned it by watching Mr. Rubinstein hustle clothing and by haggling over used shellac discs.
That makes perfect sense. Which brings us perfectly to the transition from that street-level hustle to the absolute pinnacle of the audio world. It is 1969.
1969.
Kenny makes the massive leap into professional studios, beginning at Pye Studios in London, and subsequently moving to Lane Lea, or DLL Studios.
And just to put this in context for you, DLL wasn't just some basement with some acoustic foam slapped on the walls.
Right.
At that time, it was an expansive, state-of-the-art facility. It was globally acclaimed as the largest purpose-built recording studio in the world.
He is operating equipment that looks like the control room of a spaceship.
Totally.
He is learning the art of the mix from these acclaimed, notoriously strict engineers who treat the studio with the reverence of a laboratory.
Right. Very serious environment.
Very serious. And this is where I really have to push back on the premise of his memoir.
Okay, let's hear it.
The title of the book is There Ain't No Rules in Rock and Roll. But if you are sitting behind a 1969 mixing console, you are bound by the most rigid rules imaginable.
That's a fair point.
Right. You are dealing with volatile electrical voltage, the strict physics of sound waves, and the magnetic saturation limits of analog tape. If you don't follow the rules of physics, the tape distorts, the equipment breaks, and the recording is ruined.
You can't cheat physics.
Exactly. So how on earth can a man who spent his life mastering those strict physical laws claim that there are no rules?
See, that tension is exactly the takeaway of his entire 40-year career.
Okay, explain that.
You have to separate the rigid machinery from the chaotic magic.
Machinery versus magic.
Yeah, the hardware, the mixing desks, the microphones, the magnetic tape, it demands absolute obedience to the laws of physics.
Right.
The acclaimed engineers he studied undermastered those technical rules. But what Kenny observed over decades of watching artists walk through those studio doors is that the human element, the actual application of talent, defies every single logical rule we try to apply to it.
Ah, I see. So the physics are absolute, but the people are anarchy.
Exactly. You can engineer the perfect acoustic environment, calibrate the desk flawlessly, and have an artist who has studied music theory for 20 years step into the booth and produce something completely lifeless.
Yeah, clinically perfect but boring.
Right.
Right.
Conversely, you can have a band that has been together for 5 minutes who barely know how to tune their instruments, walk into that exact same room, break every structural rule of songwriting, and somehow capture a raw charisma that sells millions of records.
It's lightning in a bottle.
It is. He realized that while you must master the rigid rules of the medium, you cannot engineer a hit. When it comes to human success and creative resonance, there truly are no rules. You just have to be prepared to capture that lightning, whether it comes from the remarkably gifted or the completely deluded.
That is so wild, which makes his perspective so valuable. But it also raises a massive logistical question for me.
What's that?
How does one human being accurately remember 40 years of chaotic, rule-breaking recording sessions?
Oh, memory is fickle.
Yeah, I mean, the sessions blend together, the nights run long. How do you write a historically accurate memoir decades later?
Well, you don't rely on memory.
No.
No, you rely on the mundane, administrative paperwork you left behind.
Here's where it gets really interesting. From 1971 all the way to 2009, Kenny meticulously maintained personal diaries.
Decades of diaries.
Right. But he wasn't doing this with the grand romantic vision of being the ultimate historian of the music industry. He wasn't trying to capture the zeitgeist of the era or anything like that.
Of course not.
He literally just wanted to log his sessions to make absolutely sure the studio accounting department paid him for his overtime hours.
It is the ultimate paradox of historical documentation. If we connect this to the bigger picture throughout human history, whether you are examining the shipping manifests of ancient spice traders or the tax records of medieval blacksmiths.
Right, or the overtime logs of a 1970s audio engineer.
Exactly. The most vivid, reliable, and contextual details of wild eras are almost always captured entirely by accident.
Because he wasn't trying to build a myth.
No, he was just doing math.
Yeah. If you sit down to write a diary about how legendary a session was, you start embellishing. You alter the timeline to make a better story.
Human nature.
But an overtime log doesn't care about the myth. It just says, band arrived at 9 p.m., guitarist threw a tantrum at midnight, finished mixing at 4 a.m., owed 7 hours of time and a half.
And decades later, when the emotion has faded and the memories are super blurred, those dry, practical overtime logs emerge as these indispensable references.
I really do.
They furnish Kenny with the precise, unassailable timelines and raw facts required to actually anchor a lifetime of incredible stories.
So he has the timeline, he has the stories, and looking at his life, he has achieved everything he set out to do.
The pinnacle.
Yeah. He navigated the strict physics and the chaotic talent. He reached the summit. He is semi-retired, which brings us to the psychological turning point of this deep dive.
This is the heavy part.
Right. If you have already won the game, why subject yourself to the grueling process of writing a book?
This ventures into the psychology of the empty horizon. It's something high achievers rarely talk about.
Kenny explains his evolving perspective on ambition in the book. As a child, living in his imagination, he believed dreams were just things floating in the air that you could easily reach out and grab.
Right. Very innocent view.
But as he matured, he realized the brutal truth dreams are mountains. They require painful, exhausting physical climbing.
And he proved he was willing to do the climbing. I mean, he conquered the mountains of his industry. He stood at the absolute peak.
But when he looked out from that perfect, hard-won summit, he experienced a truly daunting realization.
What was that?
There were no more mountains on the horizon. The struggle was over. And instead of feeling pure, unadulterated bliss, he felt a creeping, dangerous complacency setting in.
This raises an important question for anyone striving for something. We are fundamentally wired to climb. The human brain thrives on friction, on problem solving, on overcoming the next obstacle.
Right. We need the struggle.
We do. When the climb is suddenly over, that lack of friction isn't relaxing. It can be deeply unsettling.
Oh, for sure.
The realization Kenny had is that you cannot just stand on the summit forever.
Yeah.
If there are no natural mountains left on your horizon, you have to purposefully construct a new one.
Wow. So writing this memoir wasn't an exercise in looking backward. It was an act of survival.
Exactly.
He needed a new peak to scale, and he approached this brand new mountain with the exact same street-level humor he learned at the East Lane Market all those years ago.
Oh, I love this part.
When it came time to title the book, his initial instincts were hilarious. He wanted to call it Sold Over 5 Million Copies Worldwide, or the #1 bestseller.
Pure Mr. Rubinstein energy.
Totally.
Just bypassing the art and going straight for the psychological hustle. Here today and gone tonight.
Yeah. He admitted those titles were incredibly catchy, but he realized they betrayed the actual soul of the journey.
All right, it was too cynical.
The real goal of the memoir had evolved for him. He didn't just want a bestseller. He wanted to weave a vivid tapestry.
A historical document.
Yeah, he wanted to document the unsung heroes, the session players, the tape operators, the people who actually made the magic happen alongside the legendary artists.
That's beautiful.
And he wanted to document the transformative shifts of an industry transitioning from analog tape to digital files. So he settled on the universal truth he learned the hard way. There ain't no rules in rock and roll.
It serves as an invitation. He built this new mountain not just to give himself something to climb, but to take you, the reader, on that exact same unforgettable expedition.
So what does this all mean? We've looked at Kenny's 40-year view behind the mixing desk. And the takeaway is that a massively successful career isn't a perfectly drawn map where point A connects cleanly to point B.
It never is.
No, it is a series of accidental sparks, relentless hustling, and learning to manage the sheer chaos of human nature.
Chaos is the right word.
But more importantly, true success requires the profound self-awareness to recognize when you've run out of horizon.
Right.
It's knowing when complacency is creeping in and having the sheer willpower to invent a brand new challenge just to keep yourself moving forward.
It is a phenomenal framework for lifelong reinvention. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to offer you a thought to explore regarding your own life right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about the mundane overtime logs you're generating today.
Oh, that is a fascinating lens to look through.
Consider your digital calendar invites, your digital grocery lists, the quick, seemingly meaningless text messages you send complaining about a delayed flight or, noting a bizarre interaction you had during a meeting.
Yeah, the digital clutter.
Exactly. You view these things as administrative trash, meant to be deleted tomorrow. But if you were to somehow preserve them and look back at them in 40 years, what incredible accidental history of your life are you secretly recording right now without even realizing it?
That is such a cool thought. We often paralyze ourselves thinking we need some grand master plan to document our legacy.
Right, like we have to write a formal autobiography.
But perhaps we are just stumbling around, grinding down the needle on the record, leaving a beautiful, accidental trace of our passions for the future to find.
Perfectly said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. We have loved exploring this incredible journey with you, and we will catch you on the next one.